Ever feel like something's just off? You see so many college grads working jobs that don't need a degree, but then you hear on the news that we have these massive shortages of skilled workers. How does that even make sense? It's a huge puzzle. And to figure out how we got here, we've got to start with one single, absolutely massive number: 69,320. So what is that? The population of a small city? Nope. That's the number of students enrolled at just one American university, the University of Central Florida. Now, to really wrap your head around that scale, think about this. That one school has more students than the entire country has news reporters or chiropractors. And look, this isn't about that one university. It's a symptom, a sign of a much bigger trend that has created a really fundamental problem in our economy. And that problem? It's a broken labor market. The sheer scale of college enrollment has thrown the whole system completely out of balance. We've ended up with this huge disconnect between the workforce we have and the workforce we, actually need. This chart right here, this gets to the absolute core of the issue. Just look at the gap. Right now, about 37% of American workers have a 4-year degree. But here's the kicker: only 32% of jobs actually require one. We are literally producing far more graduates than there are graduate-level jobs for them to do. And the fallout from this is very, very real. Over half of recent grads are underemployed. That's a fancy way of saying they're in jobs that don't use their degree. Yeah, the classic barista with a history degree. Meanwhile, we've got these critical shortages of electricians and plumbers, and many of these 6-figure jobs are just sitting empty because there's nobody there to fill them. So you have to ask, right? Why aren't young people jumping at these high-paying trade jobs? Well, the common thing you hear, especially from older generations, is this: that kids these days are just lazy, or they're entitled and they just don't want to do hard work. But that's just a simple answer to a really complex problem. The real reasons are so much deeper, and they have very little to do with laziness. To understand what's really going on, we need to rewind and look at how this whole thing started. The roots of our current situation can all be traced back to this one powerful idea that completely took over a few decades ago: the ideology of college for all. And its origin story might actually surprise you. It has a lot more to do with national security than it does with education. This quote is pretty much ground zero. In 1983, right at the height of the Cold War, this report called A Nation at Risk came out, and it used this intense, militaristic language to frame education as a national security issue. The argument was basically, to beat the Soviets, we had to boost our human capital. Education became a weapon in the Cold War. And this idea didn't just happen overnight. That report in '83 kind of kicked things off. By the '90s, college for all had become this bipartisan mantra, pushed by politicians on both the left and the right. And the result? By the 2000s, college enrollment just went through the roof. It absolutely exploded. This whole political push created a powerful cultural shift. It wasn't just about policy anymore. It was about social pressure. A college degree became less about getting a specific job and more about just status. It created what we can call a status trap. So let's look at this fascinating example. The median salary for an elevator installer, a job that only needs a high school diploma, was almost $100,000 in 2022. That's more than many architects or accountants make with a bachelor's degree. So why were these lucrative trade jobs being completely ignored? It's because the logic in our culture got totally short-circuited. I mean, it started out simple enough. College leads to a good job brings you money, and money gives you status. But over time, people just skipped the middle steps. The equation in the American mind became simply college equals status, period. And that's the crucial point here. The degree itself, the piece of paper, became the prize. It wasn't a golden ticket to propel you forward anymore. It became the minimum requirement, the table stakes, just to stay in the game. Not going to college was increasingly seen as some kind of personal failure. But what about the money? I mean, the number one argument for college has always been that it's a surefire financial investment. Well, let's unpack that illusion, because when you look at the data, it's a lot closer to a high-stakes gamble. You have definitely seen a chart like this before. The story it tells is simple. Over a lifetime, a college graduate earns way more money than a high school graduate. The message seems clear. College is a no-brainer, a totally foolproof investment. But that simple graph is dangerously misleading because of what it hides. The real question is, what isn't this chart telling us? Well, for starters, it hides this. A staggering 41% of students who start a 4-year degree don't actually finish it within 6 years. That whole college wage premium only applies to the people who actually graduate. So what happens to the almost half who don't? And here is the devastating answer. This graph shows the wages for 3 groups. College grads, they earn the most. High school grads are there in the middle. But look at that third group, the people with some college, no degree. They often earn less than someone who never went to college at all, but they are frequently left with thousands of dollars in student debt. It's the absolute worst of both worlds. So when you factor in the insane tuition costs and that high risk of dropping out, the whole safe investment of college starts to look a lot more like a coin flip. It's a gamble that can leave students, especially those from families that aren't well off, poorer than when they started. So if college for all was the wrong path, what's the right one? The temptation is just to swing the pendulum all the way in the other direction, but that would just be repeating the exact same mistake. See, the core problem was the for all part. It was a one-size-fits-all mandate. The solution isn't to create a new mandate, like trade school for all. That would just create a whole different set of imbalances. And this is the most crucial takeaway of all. The goal is not to bash college or take away that opportunity from people who would truly benefit. The goal is to remove the cultural obligation, that immense social pressure that forces young people onto a single path, and in doing so, closes the door on other valid, fulfilling, and pretty lucrative careers. Ultimately, all of this leaves us with a much bigger question to think about. We need a really radical shift in how we value different kinds of work. We need to accept that we need architects and we need elevator installers, and that both are essential, valuable, and can be paths to a successful life. The real challenge, maybe, is just redefining what success itself even looks like.